United States of America years ago and was not seen by anyone for 2.5 years. And thanks to our great work with our partners in the government of India and overseas, we literally captured...
At 8:07 a.m. in Sacramento, California, the statement sounded like it came from a disaster briefing, not a law enforcement update. "We did not find a tunnel," Attorney General Marisol Vance said. "We found an underground economy." Then the numbers dropped. Hard, cold, and specific. 2.4 tons of narcotics seized across 3 counties, 1.1 million fentanyl pills counted, bagged, and photographed under federal evidence lights, 412 kilograms of cocaine stamped in kilo bricks, 190 kilograms of heroin vacuums sealed in medical-grade wrap, 73 weapons recovered, including rifles with altered serials, $16.8 million in bulk cash and crypto keys. And, beneath a mansion that sat like a clean white promise on a hillside, investigators located a tunnel system that didn't belong to suburban California. It belonged to something else. They called it the most sophisticated private residence tunnel operation they had ever dismantled in the state. And the name tied to the property wasn't a cartel boss. It was a lawyer, a Somali attorney, with a public image built on suits, charity dinners, and polished courtroom speeches. Hassan Abshir H.A. Nur. On paper, he was a respected defense attorney. In the federal file, he was listed as a suspected kingpin, allegedly coordinating a fictional Somali drug syndicate, using legal work as camouflage and real estate as cover. And before the briefing ended, the FBI spokesperson promised something that made the room go quiet again. "If you think this stops at a tunnel," he said, "you haven't seen what was built on top of it. Stay with this. Because what comes next is not just a raid story. It's the anatomy of a takeover. How a cartel-style network doesn't always invade with guns first. Sometimes it walks in with contracts, shell companies, and clean money, and only later does the violence arrive to protect what the paperwork already owns." At 4:33 a.m., the night operation began. 4:33 a.m., Crestline Heights, Los Angeles County, California. The neighborhood was the kind that tries to pretend the rest of the city doesn't exist. Gated driveways, manicured hedges, security cameras with infrared lenses, quiet streets so clean they looked staged. The sky was black and low. A marine layer rolled in from the coast, turning streetlights into halos and making every parked car look like a shadow with a heartbeat. And then the convoy came. Unmarked SUVs gliding uphill without sirens. A matte black armored rescue vehicle that looked like it didn't belong in a residential zip code. A marked van from a local SWAT unit staged 2 blocks away. Lights off, waiting for the signal. On the radio, the voice was calm. Professional. Almost bored. But everyone's hands were tight on their gear. Because the warrant stack wasn't for a party house. It was for a mansion owned through layered LLCs, property records routed through Nevada and Delaware shell companies, signed off by a judge with a fully fictional name, Judge Ellen Caraway, Superior Court, Los Angeles County. The entry team was a blend of agencies, because this wasn't just drugs. This was immigration fraud, financial crimes, narcotics trafficking, and suspected human smuggling tied to the logistics. FBI Tactical, DEA Narcotics Group, ICE Special Agents for Smuggling and Document Fraud, D's Intelligence Support, and local SWAT for the breach, because if the residence was fortified, it would turn into a shooting gallery fast. At 4:36 a.m., they stacked on the front gate. No loud announcements at first, just a silent approach. A hydraulic tool kissed the lock. Metal bent, and the gate swung open with a soft, almost polite squeal. The driveway was long, curving past decorative stonework and landscape lights that cast thin beams through fog. The mansion sat at the top like a trophy. White stucco, dark windows, a front entrance framed by pillars meant to suggest power without saying it out loud. The breacher raised a fist. Hold. 2 agents peeled to the side, cutting angles. Then the call came. Execute. The knock was not a knock. It was a strike. A steel ram hit the door once, twice. On the third impact, the door split, and the sound echoed down the hill like something breaking in the bones of the neighborhood. Federal agents. Get down. Flashbang. A white burst that turned the marble foyer into a blinding stage. Then movement. Fast. A man in a robe appeared at the top of a staircase, turning like he'd been woken mid-dream. Not confused, not surprised, angry. For a split second, he looked less like a homeowner and more like someone whose schedule had been interrupted. He shouted something in Somali, short, sharp, command-like. And that's when two things happened at once. First, the agents saw armed security, 3 men, black clothes, pistols visible, trying to move not toward cover but toward the back hallway. Second, the DIA team lead saw it on the wall, not art. A reinforced steel door disguised as paneling, the kind you don't install for privacy. You install it because you need to protect something. A gunshot cracked. Not sustained fire, one pop, a warning shot into the ceiling from a panicked guard who decided the badge didn't scare him. The response was immediate. A SWAT operator drove him to the floor with a shield, wrist twisted, weapon kicked away. Zip ties snapped tight. One by one, the house got quieter like a machine being shut down. But the back hallway was still alive. Footsteps, a door slamming, a deadbolt being thrown. That's where the second team hit. They breached the steel door. Inside was a corridor that didn't match the architecture of the mansion. No decorative lights, no artwork. Just concrete and cold air. The kind of cold that doesn't belong in a home. It belongs underground. The corridor led to a utility room with a floor drain and a heavy industrial freezer humming like it had been working all night. Inside the freezer, wrapped bundles. At first glance, it looked like meat. Then a DIA agent sliced one open. Powder, cocaine, packed in plastic and wax, layered for concealment like someone had studied how to beat K9 units. A second bundle. Heroin. A third. Fentanyl pills in mylar bags. By 5:02 a.m., the first tally started coming in from other targets, because the mansion was only one strike point. 5:02 a.m. Wilmington, Los Angeles. A warehouse registered as a maritime import consultancy went dark the moment the teams arrived. Power cut. Cameras disabled. Shredder running. They hit it anyway. Found pallets labeled auto parts, and inside those pallets were vacuum-sealed bricks of narcotics. 5:11 a.m. Fresno County, Industrial Farm Corridor. A refrigerated truck yard where produced trailers sat ready for early delivery. Agents opened a trailer marked leafy greens. In a hidden compartment behind insulated wall panels, they found fentanyl pills packed in cardboard boxes with fake vitamin labels. 5:19 a.m., San Bernardino County. A small strip mall storefront posing as a money transfer and legal translation service. Inside, counting machines, a ledger, and a stack of burner phones still warm from use. The seizures were big enough to make headlines. But the operation wasn't chasing headlines. It was chasing the spine of the network. And at 5:27 a.m., inside the mansion's utility corridor, a SWAT operator noticed something that didn't belong. A seam in the concrete wall. A line too straight to be random. He tapped it with the butt of his tool. Hollow. They pulled a wall panel. Behind it was another door, smaller, reinforced, fitted with a keypad. The FBI tech team worked the keypad. No luck. So they went old school. They cut it. Metal screamed. Sparks lit the corridor like fireflies. The door dropped. And the air that poured out was worse than cold. It smelled like damp earth and diesel and something chemical, like plastic heated too long. A ladder descended into darkness, and the tunnel began. not a crawl space. A tunnel you could walk in. 6 feet tall. Reinforced supports. Lighting strips wired clean. A rail system on the floor. Small metal tracks like something used to move heavy cargo quietly. This wasn't amateur. This wasn't desperation. This was engineering. And that's when the twist hit harder than any gunshot. Halfway down the tunnel, agents found a sealed cabinet mounted to the wall, protected by a steel plate. Inside were encrypted hard drives, a stack of plastic ID cards, and a printed binder with tab sections. The binder had a title page in clean, corporate font. Portfolio, Westridge Corridor. Under it, a smaller line, authorized H-AIN. Those initials weren't random. They matched the attorney's name. And suddenly this wasn't just a tunnel. It was a signed operation. At 11:46 a.m., the scene moved to a different kind of battlefield. 11:46 a.m., FBI Cyber Forensics Unit, downtown Los Angeles field office. A room full of screens, whiteboards, coffee cups that had gone cold hours ago. Analysts pulled images of the drives, cloned them, verified integrity. And then the slow fight began, the fight against encryption built to protect an empire. They worked in measured steps. One partition opened at 1:09 p.m., another at 2:27 p.m., and at 3:18 p.m., the network diagram appeared like a blueprint for a hidden city. Nodes connected by lines, routes, drop points, payment channels, front companies, and at the top, a code name that sounded like something a corporate strategist would invent, not a street crew. Operation Night Vault. The diagram didn't just show narcotics movement, it showed control. Shell companies, construction services, private security, home healthcare supplies, import-export consulting, faith-based community aid, ghost corporations registered to addresses that didn't exist, offshore accounts routed through layered transfers, sham charities collecting donations then wiring money out as medical outreach, a restaurant chain with 5 locations and no customers yet constant cash revenue deposits, a logistics firm with contracts to haul produce but using the produce corridor as cover to move cocaine and fentanyl pills north. The money flows were global. Europe, East Africa, the Gulf, back into California through real estate investments, legal retainer fees, and consulting services, and then the villain's fingerprint surfaced not as ink, as a digital authorization key, a private credential used to approve route changes and emergency contingencies inside Operation Night Vault. The key owner, Hassan Abshir Noor, a Somali attorney, a man who knew court systems, subpoenas, how to stall, how to intimidate without touching a weapon. The file linked him to corridor management, drug tunnels, stash points, convoy timing, and what the documents called corridor sanitation, which investigators interpreted as removing witnesses, erasing paper trails, and neutralizing risk. That's the moment the analysts stopped calling it a trafficking ring. They started calling it a command structure. Because this wasn't corruption, it was command-level collusion. This wasn't negligence, it was engineered treason against the public safety, built under the mask of legal legitimacy. And in the deepest folder beneath multiple layers, there was a file with a name that sounded like a plan to keep the entire state on a leash. Phase 2, California Anchor. One analyst stared at it and said the quiet part out loud. This was never meant to be temporary. At 4:08 a.m., the next morning, the command center lit up. 4:08 a.m., Joint Operations Command, Riverside County, California. A wall-sized digital map displayed Southern California like a living organism. And then the red markers started pulsing. Los Angeles, Long Beach, Wilmington, Fresno Corridor, San Bernardino Logistics Yards. A cluster near the desert where warehouses sit far apart and nobody asks questions. Dozens of nodes, all connected, all feeding the same pipeline. The briefing was tight. Over 250 personnel staged across agencies, FBI, D, ICE, DITCH, dozens of SWAT teams and tactical units, helicopters staged for aerial overwatch and containment, armored vehicles for high-risk entries, mobile evidence response teams for immediate seizure and cataloging, and along the coast, federal maritime units coordinated with port security to clamp down on shipments that might flee through the harbor. Not a war, but a siege. At 4:41 a.m., the first wave hit a desert warehouse near Victorville, a cold chain storage site. Inside, a drug super lab setup for cutting product, packaging, and pushing it into legitimate freight lines. Chemicals, sealers, presses, stacks of fake labels for nutritional supplements. A hillside drug fortress disguised as an executive wellness retreat. Guards armed, cameras everywhere. They surrendered fast when they realized the perimeter was sealed and the air units were overhead. A hidden tunnel access point discovered beneath a detached garage in a second property tied to the same LLC web, shorter than the mansion tunnel, but connected to storm infrastructure. A migrant smuggling transit house near a freeway interchange used as cover and chaos, the kind of place where bodies pass through and nobody wants to look too closely. Teams moved like synchronized clocks. Breaches, shouts, hands up, evidence bags filling fast. And with every hour, the seizure numbers climbed. By midday, agents reported more fentanyl pills, hundreds of thousands, more cocaine, more heroin, methamphetamine in sealed bricks, tucked inside produce crates and foam panels, cash in wall voids, gold bars in a safe, crypto wallets on hardware keys. Server racks humming in back rooms like this was a tech startup instead of a syndicate. And then the arrests. Not just runners, not just warehouse managers, corporate faces, compliance people, bookkeepers, security coordinators, the kind of staff you hire when your criminal enterprise starts operating like a corporation. Finally, the attorney himself. At 1:33 p.m., Hassan Abshir Nur was escorted out of his own property. Not screaming, not pleading, he walked with a straight back and a controlled face, like a man still trying to argue his way out of reality. But the evidence didn't care about his posture, because the underworld had taken more damage in a few hours than it had in years. And still, this story wasn't done, because the deeper investigators went into the seized servers, the more they realized the tunnel wasn't just a smuggling tool. It was a symbol of what had been built above ground, a corruption system, a protection system, a parallel authority. Investigators began combing through logs, emails, payroll lists, and patrol schedules pulled from compromised accounts, and the betrayal surfaced, not as rumor, as records, a list labeled cooperative assets, payments broken into categories, cash drops, crypto transfers, legal consulting invoices, security retainers, and the compromised count grew as the evidence was validated. 21 law enforcement personnel flagged in internal communications, some low-level, some with the power to shift patrol resources. 8 border-adjacent agents tied to suspicious travel and financial patterns. 4 court-connected intermediaries who fed schedule information and helped stall warrants. It wasn't everyone. It never is. But it was enough. Enough to create patterns. Border relaxations timed for convoys, way stations closed for maintenance at the exact hours shipments moved, patrol grids falsified so coverage moved away from key corridors, internal raid schedules leaking before teams even rolled out, and you could hear the heartbreak in the voices of honest officers. One detective, fictional name Lena Torres, looked at the payroll list and didn't sound angry. She sounded tired. They didn't just buy a few cops, she said. They bought silence. They bought time. Federal agents moved on senior targets next. A deputy chief's aide who had access to deployment planning. A veteran sergeant who worked scheduling, a logistics liaison who coordinated community events that mysteriously overlapped with shipment windows. And when those arrests happened, it revealed the worst truth in the case file. The syndicate had built a second police force, not with uniforms, but with influence, a parallel enforcement system controlled by money, fear, and a legal mastermind who understood how to weaponize procedure. And that's why the investigators said the line they said at the end of the internal memo: the badge will be rebuilt from the ground up. Then the map zoomed out, because California wasn't the end. It was the showcase. Operation Night Vault showed routes branching across the West, trucking contractors moving through multiple states, piggybacking on agricultural routes and port shipments, using fake healthcare supplies as camouflage, port cities, shipping lanes, freight contractors, warehouse hubs that looked like every other warehouse hub until you opened the wrong door. The network's capacity projections pulled from internal planning suggested it could move tons of narcotics per week without triggering standard alerts, because the shipments were embedded in legitimate freight. Manifests altered at the last moment. Cargo listed as medical equipment, food-grade supplies, nonprofit aid shipments, way stations down for repairs when convoys passed, and migrant smuggling used as cover, not only for trafficking, but for confusion, noise, and misdirection. Because chaos is camouflage. Then investigators found the final catastrophic file, a forward plan, a long-term play. Its name, California Permanent Vault Legal Shield Program. It outlined strategies for influence, legal disruption, and political insulation, how to create decades of protection by manipulating the system, flooding courts, intimidating witnesses through proxy threats, and using legitimate business ownership to make enforcement look like harassment. A plan to turn the region into a stable headquarters, not a hideout, a headquarters. And the realization settled in like poison. The system hadn't just been infiltrated. It had been redesigned for syndicate survival. Now the ending, because every thriller has one. But this one doesn't end with a clean victory. It ends with a warning. Because power doesn't always arrive wearing a mask and carrying a gun. Sometimes it arrives in a tailored suit. Sometimes it arrives with a law degree. Sometimes it arrives through paperwork that looks normal until you realize what it's protecting. And the cost is always paid down the chain. Fentanyl pills don't care about zip codes. Cocaine and heroin don't care about your politics. Meth destroys quietly, then all at once. Neighborhoods hollow out. Families fracture. Emergency rooms fill up. A generation grows up around grief that never fully leaves. It was a metaphor, a hidden route built beneath the surface of normal life, so crime could move unseen while society above kept pretending everything was fine. If you're still watching, tap like so more people see this story. Comment expose if you want corruption dragged into the light, whether it's hiding in boardrooms, back rooms, or behind the language of legitimacy. And one more time, clearly, this entire narrative is fictional and dramatized for storytelling only.